The planet's name was barely a whisper among galactic community. Class 15, a designation so ominous that most explorers wouldn't dare venture near it. Rumors of its hostile atmosphere, unbreachable terrain, and lethal fauna had kept it off the radar for centuries. But that hadn't stopped the Tamsin Exploration Initiative. They'd sent a crew of the galaxy's finest, each one chosen for their ability to survive where others failed. The mission was simple: gather data, chart the world's resources, and report back. But none of them knew what awaited them on Class 15. Captain Nia Devore stood at the helm of the Astronova, her eyes fixed on the holographic display of the planet's surface. The data confirmed what they'd all heard: hostile climate, magnetic storms that scrambled electronics, and creatures that could tear a ship apart in seconds. Still, Nia had always believed in the necessity of a challenge. And this challenge, she thought, could make or break their careers. Beside her, Jax Carter adjusted the ship's navigation panel, his fingers flying across the holographic interface with practiced ease. A mechanic by trade, he was the kind of engineer who could jury-rig a weapon out of spare parts or turn a broken-down ship into a flying fortress. His grin was as sharp as his mind. "Well, Captain," he said, "if we make it out of here alive, I think I'll have a few more stories to add to my collection. You know, the ones about how I survived the planet that almost killed us." Nia didn't smile. "If we make it out alive," she echoed grimly. "Keep your focus, Carter. This isn't a tourist trip." Lena Raj, the team's biologist, stood near the rear of the bridge, staring out at the swirling clouds of Class 15's atmosphere. Her eyes weren't just observing. They were feeling the planet. It was as if the very air thrummed with energy that she could almost touch. She wasn't just interested in the survival aspects. She wanted to understand the life forms here, the ecosystems that somehow thrived in a world of extremes. "There's life here," she murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. Nia shot her a glance, brow furrowed. "Be careful what you wish for, Raj. Life here isn't the kind you'll want to study up close." Before Lena could respond, Rowan, the mercenary-turned-explorer, leaned in from the doorway. His arms were crossed, and his expression was as unreadable as ever, though the faintest trace of a smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. "You've all heard the stories, right? No one who's gone down there has ever come back in one piece." "Which is exactly why we're going," Nia replied, her tone firm. "We're not like everyone else. We'll be prepared." The ship began its descent, breaking through the chaotic atmosphere. Below, the surface of Class 15 looked like a war zone. Mountains jagged and black, oceans that boiled with violent waves, and cracks in the earth that seemed to lead straight to the planet's core. As they neared the ground, the crew tightened their harnesses, the ship's thrusters struggling to keep them steady in the turbulence. When they finally landed, the world outside the ship seemed to hum with a primal energy. Nia looked out at the barren landscape, where dust storms swirled around jagged cliffs and blackened plains. Every breath she took felt heavier, the air thick with something she couldn't name. It wasn't just the atmosphere. It was as if the planet itself was alive, watching them. "Welcome to Class 15, she muttered, unstrapping herself from her seat. Jax grabbed his gear. "Guess I'll just go ahead and see if I can get the comms working. You know, just in case we don't have any luck on this peaceful planet." Lena adjusted her visor, scanning the ground as she prepared to disembark. Her fascination with the ecosystem was palpable, her eyes gleaming with the excitement of discovery. "Look at that foliage," she whispered, pointing toward the twisted trees in the distance. "Even here, in this hellscape, life finds a way." "Careful," Nia warned, stepping toward the hatch. "This planet isn't a science experiment. It's a death sentence to anyone who's not ready for it." The door of the Astronova hissed open, and the crew stepped onto the surface. Instantly, the harsh winds battered them, as though the planet itself rejected their presence. But they'd come for a reason, and Nia wasn't about to let something like a storm stand in their way. The team was suited up in protective exogear, but even that didn't ease the sensation of discomfort gnawing at Nia's gut. The air felt wrong, too thick, too heavy. Their sensors pinged wildly, and static crackled through their comms as they made their way toward the marked coordinates. After hours of trekking across the jagged terrain, the team stumbled upon something they hadn't expected. At first, it was just a flash of metal half buried in the sand, and then another and another. Soon, they were standing in front of what could only be described as ruins. Alien structures that resembled nothing any known species had ever constructed. "Is that human?" Jax asked, his voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. Nia's heart skipped a beat. The architecture before them had traces of human design, though twisted and unfamiliar, as if someone had made use of whatever resources the planet provided. More importantly, the ruins were in far too good condition for something abandoned centuries ago. The faint hum of energy emanating from within confirmed their suspicions. "Impossible," Rowan muttered. "We were told no one ever survived here." Nia's gut tightened. Someone had made it. But who? And why hadn't anyone ever told them? She motioned for the team to fan out, her instincts on high alert. As they moved deeper into the ruins, it became clear that humanity had been here, not just in passing, but in force. The remnants of old tech, battered but still functional, lay scattered among the alien landscape. It was as though the settlers had adapted, built something from nothing, and lived to tell the tale. But Nia couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery was far from a stroke of luck. The question that loomed in her mind was simple and terrifying. What else had humanity left behind on this death world? And before she could ask, a shadow shifted in the distance, a flicker of movement among the ruins. "We're not alone," she whispered. The ruins stretched before them, silent and unsettling. Jagged metal spires, half buried in the shifting sands, loomed like forgotten sentinels. The structures, though weathered, held a strange symmetry, evidence of civilization that had adapted to a world that seemed to offer nothing but destruction. Nia's boots crunched on the gravel as she led the team deeper into the heart of the mysterious settlement. "Look at this," Lena called, kneeling beside a crumbled wall where faded symbols were etched into the stone. "This doesn't look alien. It's human. It's the same script we use in deep space comms." Nia stepped closer, squinting at the ancient markings. They were familiar, yet their context made her heart race. These weren't just survivors. They were colonists, people who had made this hostile world their home. But how? And why had anyone known about them? "Captain," Jax called from a few meters ahead, his voice tight with disbelief. "You might want to see this." Nia followed the sound of his voice, her pulse quickening. He was crouched beside what appeared to be a large, rusted metal hatch embedded in the ground. Unlike the crumbling stone, the hatch seemed intact, almost unnaturally so. Jax ran his fingers along the seams, scanning it with a portable device. "It's got power. I can feel it through the readings." "How is that possible?" Rowan, standing to behind Nia, asked, his voice low and cautious. "A place like this? A hatch that still works? No way. Someone's been maintaining it." "Or someone's still here," Nia murmured. She felt a chill creep up her spine as she crouched beside Jax. The thought was unsettling, but undeniably real. The hatch seemed to beckon, its existence defying the harsh, unforgiving nature of the planet. What had once been a colony, now nothing but ruins, clearly hadn't disappeared by chance. Someone had stayed, and had stayed long enough for their legacy to be embedded into the very fabric of the world. Jax worked the controls, his hands moving quickly. "It's an old-style security system," he muttered under his breath. "This kind of tech is ancient, but it's still here. If there's anyone left alive down there, they've kept things running." With a groan, the hatch finally gave way, revealing a darkened, metallic staircase that spiraled downward. A stale, musty air rose from the depths. Nia exchanged a glance with her team. Lena's face was flushed with excitement, while Rowan seemed uneasy, his fingers drumming lightly against his sidearm. They all knew the risks, but the pull of the unknown was too strong. Whatever had happened here, whatever secrets the planet held, they had to know. "Let's go," Nia said firmly, her voice steady. "We didn't come all this way to turn back now." The team descended into the darkness, their lights piercing the murky air. The stairs felt ancient beneath their boots, creaking with each step as though the very structure had not been disturbed in centuries. The hallway below was dimly lit by flickering panels, their light weak and sporadic. Everything seemed suspended in time, as if the settlement's inhabitants had simply vanished, leaving their world frozen behind them. Old tech hummed quietly in the background, screens filled with static and half-formed images. It felt like a place out of a dream, a place that shouldn't exist. Yet here they were. As they moved deeper, the walls grew smoother, and the metal corridors began to open up into larger chambers. It was there, in the heart of the underground facility, that they found it, a room large enough to house a small city, the floor scattered with rusted equipment. But in the center, standing stark against the decay, was an enormous structure, an unmarked monolith. Its surface was smooth, metallic, and almost organic in its curvature, pulsing faintly with energy. Around it were various relics, pieces of old tech, unfamiliar, but undeniably human. Lena gasped, her fingers hovering just above a control panel as she studied it. This is all human tech, she said, off thick in her voice. It's old, but it's human. This must have been the central hub for the colony. I don't get it, Jack said, kneeling by a console. How did they make this place work? You can't just throw a colony together in the middle of a death world and expect it to survive. I think they didn't, Nia said quietly, turning away from the monolith. I think they adapted. Rowan crossed his arms, looking around the room. Adapted how? To this. He gestured to the wreckage. If they were human, they wouldn't have lasted 5 years down here. Maybe they weren't just human, Nia muttered, her mind racing. What if they did something, changed themselves to survive? Lena's eyes widened as the implications settled in. Are you saying they modified themselves? Think about it, Nia continued, her voice growing more intense. A Class 15 death world isn't something you just survive without making serious sacrifices. These people weren't just tough. They must have gone to extreme lengths to adapt to this world, change their biology, their minds, maybe even their biology. They could have integrated with the planet in ways we don't even understand. The hum of the monolith pulsed louder, as if in response to Nia's words. It felt as though the entire room was alive, as if the technology, the very air, was watching them. The cold silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint buzz of the old equipment. A crackling sound echoed through the room, and all of them froze. The source of the noise wasn't the machines, but a voice. Quiet, distorted, but unmistakable. It came from one of the consoles. I know you're here, the voice whispered, the static crackling as it continued. I've been waiting. The air in the room seemed to shift. The team's eyes widened. Waiting for who? Jax demanded, his voice urgent. The voice, though faint, answered with chilling clarity. For you? Nia's heart raced. Someone was down here. Someone had survived all this time. And now, they were not just waiting for visitors. They were expecting them. Rowan's fingers brushed the grip of his weapon. Whatever's down here, I don't think it's happy to see us. Nia tightened her jaw. We have no choice. We need answers. The unknown had just become far more dangerous. The voice from the console had silenced the room. It wasn't just a warning. It was a declaration. Someone or something had been waiting. As Nia, Jax, Lena, and Rowan exchanged tense looks, the palpable weight of the unknown settled over them. They had come to this planet for answers, but now they realized the true cost of the curiosity. The planet itself was not a passive entity. It was alive in ways they couldn't comprehend, and it wasn't about to let them leave unscathed. Jax was the first to react, his instincts kicking in as he darted toward the nearest control panel. His fingers moved with frantic precision, tapping into the system's old codes, trying to shut off the eerie, distorted voice. We've got to find the source of this, he muttered. Whatever's talking to us, it's not just a message, it's a trap. I think we've already walked right into it, Rowan said, his voice a low growl. He stood near the exit, eyes scanning the darkened corridors beyond. And I don't think we're alone anymore. Nia's stomach tightened. The monolith hummed louder now, its pulse syncing with her heartbeat. She could feel it in her bones, that instinctual tug that something was shifting beneath them. This place was a death trap from the start. We need to move. But just as they turned to retreat, the walls of the chamber groaned. The ground beneath them shifted with a violent tremor. Lena gasped, her hand flying to the nearest support column as the floor cracked open in jagged lines. "We're not going anywhere," Nia said, voice steady despite the growing chaos. She turned to the team, eyes sharp. "Everyone stick together. There's more to this place than we thought." Without waiting for a response, Nia grabbed a flashlight from her gear and led the way, moving cautiously through the newly formed fissures in the floor. The dim light from the monolith barely illuminated their surroundings as they pressed forward, each step feeling heavier, as though the planet itself was weighing them down. Behind them, the hum of the monolith became a low, guttural rumble, resonating through the air. Suddenly, a shrill screech pierced the quiet, followed by the unmistakable sound of claws scraping across metal. Lena whirled around, her face pale. Did anyone else hear that? Before Nia could respond, the ground shook violently again and a massive creature, its outline barely visible in the gloom, burst in the cracks in the walls. It was a grotesque hybrid of bone and muscle, its body heaving with unnatural energy. Its eyes glowed faintly, and rows of jagged teeth gleamed in the dim light. Rowan's hand was on his sidearm in an instant, but Nia held up a hand, stopping him. "Not yet," she ordered. "We need to understand what we're dealing with before we fight it." The creature let out another deafening screech, charging forward. Lena's eyes widened in terror, but Nia's mind was already calculating the odds. "Fall back," she barked. "Get to the hallway. Now!" The team sprinted toward the exit as the creature lunged, its massive limbs tearing to the floor in pursuit. Jax cursed under his breath, tossing a small grenade toward the creature. The explosion rocked the chamber, but the creature barely flinched, its body reforming in an unsettling way as the damage seemed to mend itself. "We're dealing with something alive here," Nia said, her voice grim. "Something that isn't bound by the rules of biology. It's evolving in real time." "Just great," Rowan muttered, the sarcasm not quite hiding the edge of fear in his tone. "Not only is the planet trying to kill us, it's doing it with the kind of things nightmares are made of." As they reached the hallway, Nia's mind raced. The creature was too powerful, too resilient. They couldn't fight it with weapons. They needed another plan. Lena, ever the optimist, grabbed her arm, her eyes alight with strange excitement. "What if we use it? What if we can reverse engineer its biology? We've seen these creatures evolve on the fly. What if we can learn from that?" Nia's brow furrowed. "Learn how to become the creature?" she asked, her voice laced with disbelief. "No. Learn how to adapt to the environment, like they did. Maybe we can turn this to our advantage," Lena pressed. "There's a way to make this work. We're not completely powerless here." "Powerless?" Rowan scoffed. "We're being chased by a genetically engineered nightmare. How do you propose we just adapt?" Before Nia could mediate the brewing tension between the two, another screech echoed from the chamber behind them, followed by the sickening sound of the creature's claws scraping across the walls, drawing closer. There wasn't time to argue. "No more talking," Nia commanded. "We need to get to the control room. If this thing's using the planet's systems to regenerate, then we need to find its core. We disrupt that, and we disrupt the creature." Jax nodded, his face hardening as he checked his weapon. "Got it. Let's move fast." As they ran down the narrow, twisting corridors, they began to understand just how vast the complex beneath the surface was. It was more than just a settlement. It was an entire system, built into the very bones of the planet. The deeper they went, the more it felt like they were descending into the belly of some ancient, sleeping beast. The walls pulsed with an eerie energy, and each step they took seemed to awaken something. The air grew colder, heavier, and their breaths became labored. Suddenly, the corridor split and a massive, circular door opened with a low, mechanical hum. Nia's eyes locked onto the symbol above the doorway, the same marking they had seen earlier on the ruins. This was it. "This is the heart of it," Nia said, her voice filled with resolve. "This is where it started. Whatever we're facing, it's all connected to this place." But as the door slid open, a new threat materialized. From the darkness within, a figure stepped forward, a human silhouette, but distorted, as though it had been fused with the technology around it. The figure's eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and a voice, clearer this time, rang out from the shadows. "You should not have come. Nia's heart hammered in her chest. They weren't just facing the planet's creations anymore. They were facing the very people who had once called this world home. And they were no longer human. "We were never meant to be," the figure continued, its voice calm yet laced with an unsettling hunger. "We evolved just as the world did. And now you will too." The door slammed shut behind them, sealing them inside. The figure stepped closer, its movements fluid, almost unnatural. The once human form before them was no longer bound by flesh as they knew it. The eyes, glowing with an eerie, predatory light, locked onto Nia with unsettling precision. She could feel the weight of its gaze, not just as a threat, but as a promise of what they might become if they failed to escape. "We were never meant to be," the figure repeated, its voice now clearer, tinged with an almost reverent finality. "We adapted. We survived." The words were spoken like a mantra, as though each syllable had been carved into the very core of the world itself. Nia's pulse quickened, but her mind stayed sharp. She had seen too much. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was a warning, a reminder that this planet wasn't merely deadly. It was evolving, reshaping its inhabitants in ways no one could have anticipated. "What happened here?" Nia demanded, her voice firm. She wasn't about to let fear take hold. If she was going to find answers, she needed the truth. The figure's lips twisted into a grim smile, but it wasn't a smile of warmth. It was the kind of smile someone gave when they were speaking to someone they knew would never fully understand. "You think you can survive by brute force? This world doesn't care about your strength. It changes you, whether you want it or not." Jax's hand gripped his weapon, but Nia raised a hand to stop him. She needed to understand what they were dealing with. Who are you?" she asked, her voice measured. "Were you now?" The figure chuckled softly, a sound that echoed in the cavernous room. It was as though the very air had absorbed the laughter, reverberating in a sickening chorus. "I was once like you," it said. "Human, before the planet reshaped me. Now I am something else. Something more. Something better." Lena, standing behind Nia, shuddered at the figure's words. "Better?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You become a monster." The figure's gaze flickered to Lena, and for a moment, Nia saw something akin to pity in its eyes. "Monster?" the figure repeated, as though tasting the word. "No, child. I am the evolution of mankind. I am the result of what happens when you stop resisting the world around you and embrace it. This world gave me strength. It gave me life. And now it offers the same to you." A low rumble vibrated through the floor beneath them. The monolith hummed again, its pulse now in sync with the figure's words, as if the entire structure was alive, responding to its presence. The air around them seemed to warp, growing thicker, the walls trembling with a low vibration. Nia narrowed her eyes, realizing they were running out of time. She had to make a choice, and fast. "You're telling me this thing, this monstrosity, is what humanity has become?" She couldn't hold back the disgust in her voice. The notion of surrendering to the planet, of losing oneself to the very forces they had come to explore, was too much to accept. "I didn't lose myself," the figure said, its tone now sharp, cutting through the tension in the air. "I found a new self, a stronger one. We found it in the heart of this planet. And now, you will join us, or you will perish, just like the others." The last word hung heavy in the air, and Nia felt the full weight of its meaning. They weren't the first to arrive on this forsaken planet. There had been others before them, explorers, colonists, maybe even whole expeditions that had made the same mistake, coming here, believing they could conquer it. But the planet didn't yield. It changed them as it was changing them now, and in the end it consumed them. "We didn't come here to become like you," Nia said, her voice unwavering. "We came here to understand, to learn, to find out what happened." The figure's smile grew wider, almost cruel. "You think you can walk away from this? From the truth?" It motioned toward the darkened walls, which seemed to pulse with a faint, unnatural light. "This is the future. You can't fight it. This world is your future. You're already too far gone." Nia's hand hovered over her communicator, but she hesitated. She had come here with a mission, with the hope of discovering something new, something that could advance humanity's understanding of the universe. But she hadn't expected this. A warning from those who had already lost themselves, had already crossed a line between human and something else, something dangerous. The figure's voice broke through her thoughts. Softer now. "You're not like us yet," it said. "But you will be. You must be." Suddenly, the walls around them seemed to shift. The air grew heavier, and Nia felt the unmistakable pressure of something closing in on them. The very floor beneath their feet seemed to tremble with anticipation. She turned to the others, eyes sharp. "Get ready," she said, voice low and urgent. "I think the planet's decided it wants us to stay." Before they could react, the monolith in the center of the room erupted with a deafening screech. A wave of energy shot out from it, a pulse that crackled through the room, sending waves of force into the walls. The air warped, shifting in response, and the temperature spiked, growing unbearably hot. Lena stumbled back, her hands up to shield herself. What is happening? Nia's mind raced as she watched the figure in front of them, its body beginning to pulse with the same unnatural glow as the monolith. It was merging with the planet, as if the world itself was fusing with its mind. And suddenly, Nia understood this was the final stage of evolution, not just a physical change, but a merging of mind, body, and planet, a fusion that had allowed these beings to survive. But as the room began to close in on them, Nia knew they were running out of time. The world was going to consume them. The question wasn't whether they would survive. It was whether they could escape before they became part of the Deathworld itself. "We need to get out of here," Nia said, her voice tight with determination. "Now." But the figure's laughter echoed behind them as they ran, the sound growing louder with each step. "You can't escape," it called after them. "You're already one of us." The walls trembled once more, the rumble of the earth rising to a deafening crescendo. And in that moment, Nia realized, the real fight had just begun.